Most people buy flowers the expensive way. They go to the garden centre every spring, fill a cart with bright annuals, spend far more than they planned, plant everything, enjoy the colour for a few months, and then watch it all disappear when cold weather arrives. The next year, they do it again. There is nothing wrong with annual flowers. They bloom quickly, they come in beautiful colours, and they can fill empty spaces fast. But if you want a garden that becomes fuller, stronger, and more beautiful every year without starting from zero each spring, you need perennial flowers. Perennials are plants that return year after year when they are grown in a climate and location that suit them. Some come back from deep roots. Some spread through underground stems. Others reseed so reliably that the garden appears to renew itself. Many become larger with age, produce more flowers, and can eventually be divided into extra plants for other areas of the yard. That means one small plant can turn into an entire section of flowers over time. But not every perennial is easy. Some are short-lived. Some are picky about soil. Some disappear in humid summers or rot during wet winters. And some are sold as dependable perennials, even though they only survive in very specific climates. In this video, I am showing you 14 flowers you can plant once and enjoy for years. These are not just beautiful plants, they are useful plants. Many attract bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and other pollinators. Several handle drought after they are established. Some bloom for months, while others return at exactly the moment the garden needs colour most. Stay until the end because number 13 looks delicate, but it is one of the toughest flowering plants you can grow, and it can survive in places where many expensive garden plants fail. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Before planting anything, check your growing zone, soil, sunlight, and local climate. A flower that returns every year in one region may behave like an annual somewhere else. Choose the right plant for the right place, and your garden can improve without draining your time or your wallet. Let us get into it. Number 1. Black-eyed Susan. Black-eyed Susan is one of the easiest ways to create a garden that looks cheerful, natural, and full of life. The flowers have bright yellow petals surrounding a dark brown or nearly black centre. They look like small suns scattered across the garden, and when planted in groups, they create a strong burst of colour that can be seen from across the yard. What makes Black-eyed Susan especially valuable is how forgiving it can be. Once established, it tolerates heat, periods of dry weather, and soil that is not especially rich. It prefers full sun and reasonably well-drained ground, but it does not need to be pampered. In fact, soil that is too rich can make the plants grow tall and floppy. Black-eyed Susans usually begin blooming in summer and can continue into autumn. That timing matters because many spring flowers have already faded by the time these plants take over. They help keep the garden colourful during the hottest part of the year. Pollinators love them. Bees visit the central discs for pollen and nectar, and butterflies often stop on the broad flower heads. Later in the season, birds may feed on the seeds if you leave the dried flower heads standing. That means the plant continues providing value even after the bright petals disappear. There are several types of Black-eyed Susan, and not all behave exactly the same way. Some are true long-lived perennials. Others are biennials or short-lived perennials that keep returning through self-seeding. That is why it is important to check the plant label before buying. Even the shorter-lived types can create a dependable patch because they often drop enough seed to replace themselves. For the strongest display, plant several together rather than placing one by itself. A single plant can look lost in a large bed. A group creates the kind of natural drift that makes the colour feel intentional. Water regularly during the first growing season while the roots establish. After that, the plants can handle more dryness, although they will bloom better with occasional deep watering during long droughts. Deadheading, which means removing faded flowers, can encourage additional blooms, but do not remove every flower head if you want seedlings or want to feed birds. You can cut back some flowers and leave others. Over time, the clump may become crowded. Divide it in spring or early autumn, and suddenly one plant becomes several. That is how perennial gardening begins to save you money. Number 2. Coneflower. Coneflower is another plant that gives far more than it asks for. The most familiar type has pink or purple petals surrounding a raised orange-brown centre, but modern varieties come in white, yellow, red, orange, and even green. They are bold without looking artificial. Coneflowers have a sturdy prairie-style appearance that works in cottage gardens, wildlife gardens, borders, and naturalised beds. Their deep root systems help them tolerate dry weather once they are established. That makes them an excellent choice for gardeners who do not want to drag a hose around every day. Coneflowers perform best in full sun and well-drained soil. They can tolerate some poor soil, but they dislike sitting in wet ground, especially during winter. If your soil stays heavy and soggy, improve drainage before planting or grow them in a raised area. The flowers usually begin appearing in summer and may continue into autumn, especially if you remove spent blooms. But just like black-eyed Susan, coneflower has value after flowering. The central cones fill with seeds that attract birds. Goldfinches are especially known for feeding on them. Leaving a few dried stems standing through winter gives birds a food source and adds texture to the garden. The stems can also provide shelter for insects. If you prefer a cleaner appearance, you can cut some back and leave a few in less visible areas. Coneflowers attract bees and butterflies throughout the blooming season. Their broad landing surfaces make them easy for insects to use. They are also excellent cut flowers. A few stems brought indoors can last well in a vase, especially when cut just as the flowers begin opening. One mistake gardeners make is overwatering newly planted coneflowers. They need consistent moisture while establishing, but constantly wet soil encourages root problems. Water deeply, then allow the soil surface to begin drying. Once mature, they usually prefer being slightly dry over being soaked. Another mistake is buying highly unusual varieties without checking their reputation. Some newer double-flowered or heavily hybridized types may not be as durable as the classic forms. If your main goal is reliability, choose a proven variety with a simple flower shape. Those simpler flowers are often better for pollinators too. A well-placed coneflower can return for years, spreads slowly, and give you seeds or divisions for other areas. It is one of the easiest ways to build a pollinator garden that looks good from summer into winter. Number 3. Daylilies have a reputation for being nearly impossible to kill. That reputation is not completely exaggerated. They tolerate a wide range of soils, handle heat, survive cold winters in many regions, and continue growing in places where more delicate perennials struggle. The flowers look similar to lilies, but each bloom usually lasts only one day. That sounds disappointing until you realize that one plant can produce many buds on each flower stalk. As one flower fades, another opens. Established clumps can bloom for weeks. There are thousands of varieties, with flowers in yellow, orange, red, pink, purple, cream, and combinations of several colors. Some bloom early in the season, others bloom later. Certain varieties can even rebloom. By choosing more than one type, you can extend the flowering period. Daylilies grow from thick, fleshy roots and form expanding clumps. The grass-like leaves emerge in spring, followed by tall flower stalks. Because the leaves create a dense mound, daylilies are useful for covering ground, hiding unattractive edges and filling difficult slopes. They prefer full sun for the strongest flowering, but many can tolerate partial shade. In very hot climates, light afternoon shade may help the flowers last longer. Water them regularly during establishment. After they are rooted, they tolerate moderate drought, although consistent moisture usually leads to more flowers. Daylilies can survive neglect, but that does not mean they produce their best display without care. Removing old flower stalks keeps the plant looking tidy. In autumn or early spring, cut away dead foliage. Every few years, the clump may become crowded and flowering may decrease. That is the signal to divide it. Dig up the clump, separate it into smaller sections and replant them. What began as one plant can become 5, 10, or even more over time. This is one reason daylilies are often shared between neighbors. However, choose your variety carefully. The common orange daylily can spread aggressively in some areas. In certain regions, it may escape garden beds and become difficult to control. A named clumping variety may be a better choice for a small, managed garden. Daylilies are excellent for beginners because they recover from mistakes. Plant them, give them reasonable sunlight and drainage, and they usually return with more growth than the year before. Number 4. Peonies are not just perennials, they can become garden heirlooms. A peony planted in the right place can survive for decades. Some remain in the same garden longer than the person who planted them. The flowers are large, fragrant, and dramatic. They appear in shades of white, blush pink, deep pink, coral, red, and burgundy. Certain varieties produce simple open flowers, while others form enormous double blooms packed with petals. Peonies usually bloom in late spring or early summer, depending on the climate and variety. Their flowering period is not as long as some other plants on this list, but the display can be unforgettable. The key to growing peonies successfully is planting depth. This is where many gardeners go wrong. Herbaceous peonies grow from roots with visible buds often called eyes. If those buds are buried too deeply, the plant may produce healthy leaves year after year, but very few flowers. The eyes should usually sit close to the soil surface, with the exact depth depending on climate. Follow the instructions for your variety and region. Do not assume deeper planting offers more protection. With peonies, deeper can mean fewer blooms. They prefer full sun, although some protection from intense afternoon heat can help in very hot areas. Good drainage is essential. Peonies dislike being moved, so choose the location carefully before planting. Give them room to remain in place for many years. They also need cold winter conditions to bloom well, which makes them unsuitable for some warm climates. Gardeners in mild regions should look for varieties recommended for low-chill areas or choose a different perennial. Peony flowers can become heavy, especially after rain. Support rings or discrete stakes can prevent the stems from collapsing. Install the support early before the plant becomes large enough to hide the structure. Ants are often found crawling over peony buds. This does not mean the plant is being damaged. The ants are usually attracted to the sweet substances around the buds. You do not need to spray the flowers just because ants are present. After blooming, leave the foliage in place. The leaves collect energy that supports next year's flowers. Cutting the plant to the ground too early weakens it. Wait until frost kills the foliage in autumn, then remove the old stems. Peonies are slow to establish, and newly planted roots may not produce many flowers immediately. Be patient. This is not a plant for someone who wants instant results. It is a plant for someone who wants a flower that may still be blooming decades from now. Number 5. Coreopsis coreopsis is often called tick seed, but do not let the strange name put you off. This plant produces masses of cheerful, daisy-like flowers and can bloom for an impressively long time. Many varieties have bright yellow petals, while others come in red, orange, pink, cream, or bicolored patterns. Coreopsis has a light, airy appearance. It works beautifully along borders, in cottage gardens, in pollinator beds, and mixed with grasses or other drought-tolerant plants. Most types prefer full sun and well-drained soil. Once established, many varieties handle drought very well. They generally perform better in average or lean soil than in heavily fertilized ground. Too much fertilizer can lead to weak, floppy growth with fewer flowers. Coreopsis can begin blooming in late spring or early summer and continue for months. Deadheading encourages the plant to keep producing buds. For a large patch, you do not need to remove every faded flower individually. After the first major flush, you can lightly shear the plant back. It may look rough for a short time, but fresh growth and new flowers often follow. Different Coreopsis varieties have different lifespans. Some are dependable, long-lived perennials. Others are short-lived but reseed freely. Read the label before planting so you understand how your particular variety behaves. If it reseeds, allow some flowers to mature at the end of the season. The seedlings may not look exactly like the parent if you are growing a hybrid, but they can still add color. Coreopsis attracts bees, butterflies, and other pollinators. Its open flower shape makes nectar and pollen easy to reach. The plants are also useful for filling gaps between larger perennials. Their fine leaves contrast well with bold plants like daylilies or coneflowers. Avoid planting them in heavy, wet soil. Winter moisture is one of the quickest ways to lose Coreopsis. If your ground drains poorly, use a raised bed, slope, or container. With sunlight, drainage, and occasional trimming, Coreopsis can flower so heavily that the leaves nearly disappear beneath the blooms. It is one of the best plants for gardeners who want maximum color without maximum effort. Number 6. Bee balm earns its name. When it blooms, bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds seem to discover it immediately. The flowers form shaggy clusters in red, pink, purple, or white. They look almost like small fireworks exploding above the foliage. Bee balm is a member of the mint family, and the leaves have a strong fragrance when crushed. It spreads through underground stems and can form a large patch over time. That spreading habit is either a benefit or a warning, depending on your garden. If you want to fill a naturalized area or pollinator bed, bee balm is extremely useful. If you have a tiny formal border, you may need to control it. Plant it where it has room to move, or choose a more compact variety. Bee balm prefers full sun, but tolerates partial shade. In very hot climates, some afternoon shade can help. It likes soil that holds moderate moisture but still drains well. The most common problem is powdery mildew. This appears as a white or grey coating on the leaves. It usually becomes worse when plants are crowded, air movement is poor, or foliage stays damp. Give bee balm. Avoid packing it tightly between other plants. Water at the base instead of soaking the leaves. Choose mildew-resistant varieties when possible. Even when mildew appears, the plant may continue flowering, but prevention keeps the foliage looking better. After the first major bloom, trim the spent flowers to encourage another round. You can also cut back some stems earlier in the season to create shorter, bushier growth and stagger the bloom time. Bee balm spreads and may become crowded after a few years. Divide it in spring or autumn. Remove weak central sections and replant the healthiest outer growth. That keeps the patch vigorous and gives you extra plants. Hummingbirds are especially attracted to red varieties, while bees visit many colors. If you want a garden that feels alive and constantly moving, Bee balm is one of the best flowers you can add. It does not sit quietly in the background. It brings the entire garden to life. Number 7. Yarrow. Yarrow is a flower for difficult places. Poor soil, dry conditions, intense sun and neglect rarely frighten it. The plant produces flat-topped clusters of tiny flowers above feathery leaves. Traditional yarrow is often white, but garden varieties come in yellow, pink, red, peach, orange, and other soft shades. The flower clusters create excellent landing platforms for beneficial insects. Bees, butterflies, hoverflies, predatory wasps, and many other insects visit yarrow. That makes it useful near vegetable gardens, fruit trees, and pollinator beds. Yarrow performs best in full sun and well-drained soil. It does not need rich ground. In fact, overly fertile soil can make the stems tall, weak, and likely to fall over. Avoid heavy feeding. Once established, yarrow tolerates drought very well. Water it during the first season, then reduce the frequency as the roots develop. Deep, occasional watering is better than constant shallow watering. Yarrow can spread through roots and seeds. In the right conditions, it may move farther than expected. Plant it where some spreading is acceptable, or remove flower heads before they produce seed. Compact varieties are easier to manage in smaller beds. Deadheading extends the bloom season and keeps the plant tidy. After flowering, cut the stems back to encourage fresh growth. In mild climates, the foliage may remain attractive for much of the year. Yarrow is also a good cut flower and can be dried for arrangements. The flat clusters hold their shape well when dried. One mistake is planting yarrow in a constantly wet area. The plant may survive temporary moisture, but heavy, waterlogged soil can cause it to rot. A sunny slope or raised bed is ideal. Yarrow looks especially good beside ornamental grasses, coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, and other prairie-style plants. It adds softness without looking weak. For a garden that needs resilience, pollinator activity, and long-lasting flowers, yarrow is difficult to beat. Number 8. Salvia. Perennial salvia produces upright flower spikes that add structure and color to a garden. The blooms can be purple, blue, pink, red, or white. Depending on the variety, they rise above the foliage like bright candles and attract bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. Not every salvia is hardy everywhere. The salvia family is enormous, and some types are annuals, some are tender perennials, and others survive extremely cold winters. Always check the exact variety before buying. For reliable return, choose a perennial salvia suited to your growing zone. Most prefer full sun and well-drained soil. They tolerate drought once established and generally dislike heavy, soggy ground. Salvia often produces a strong first flush of flowers in late spring or early summer. When that display begins to fade, cut the flower stalks back. This encourages fresh growth and often leads to another round of bloom. Do not be afraid to trim it. Leaving every faded stalk in place may cause the plant to put energy into seed instead of new flowers. The foliage often has a strong scent that may discourage some browsing animals, although no plant is completely deer-proof or rabbit-proof. Hungry animals may eat almost anything. Still, salvia is usually less attractive to them than many soft-leaved flowers. The upright shape makes salvia useful for creating contrast. Plant it among rounded flowers like coneflowers, daylilies, or coreopsis. The vertical spikes break up the bed and keep it from looking flat. Compact varieties work near the front of a border. Taller types belong farther back. Give each plant enough room for airflow. Although salvia handles dry weather, newly planted roots need regular moisture. Keep the soil evenly moist during establishment, then water less frequently. Perennial salvia is one of the best choices for gardeners who want repeat blooms, strong color, and constant pollinator activity. Plant it in a sunny location, trim it after flowering, and it can return with a larger display each year. Number 9. Garden phlox. Garden phlox produces large clusters of fragrant flowers in summer. The plants grow upright, often reaching several feet tall, and create a strong block of color in the middle or back of a flower bed. The blooms come in white, pink, purple, red, lavender, and combinations with contrasting centers. Butterflies and hummingbirds are drawn to them. Garden phlox is especially valuable because it flowers after many early perennials have finished. It helps bridge the gap between spring color and autumn flowers. The plant prefers full sun, although light shade can be useful in very hot regions. Too much shade may reduce flowering and increase disease problems. Like bee balm, garden mutlocks can suffer from powdery mildew. Airflow is essential. Do not plant it against a wall with no circulation or squeeze it tightly between large shrubs. Space the plants according to their mature width. Water at the soil level and avoid keeping the leaves wet. Mildew-resistant varieties are worth choosing, especially in humid climates. Garden phlox likes richer, more moisture-retentive soil than yarrow or coneflower. It performs best with regular water, especially during dry summer weather. A layer of mulch helps keep the roots cool and reduces evaporation. Do not pile mulch against the stems. Deadhead faded flower clusters to prevent unwanted seedlings and encourage the plant to focus on healthy growth. Some phlox varieties reseed readily, and the seedlings may not match the parent plant. If you want to preserve a specific color, remove the flowers before seeds mature. Established clumps may need dividing every few years. If the center becomes weak or flowering declines, dig up the plant and replant vigorous sections. Tall varieties may need support in windy locations. You can also pinch back some stems in late spring to create shorter, bushier plants. This may delay flowering slightly but can reduce flopping. Garden phlox gives the garden height, fragrance, and strong summer color. When healthy, a mature clump can become one of the most noticeable plants in the entire yard. Number 10. Shasta daisy. Shasta daisies create the classic flower shape people imagine when they hear the word daisy. White petals surround a bright yellow center, producing a clean, cheerful look that fits almost any garden style. They bloom in summer and combine beautifully with nearly every color. Shasta daisies prefer full sun and well-drained soil. They tolerate average conditions but may struggle in heavy wet ground, especially during winter. Give them enough room for air movement and avoid overwatering. Different varieties grow to different heights. Some remain compact enough for the front of a border, while others reach several feet and may need support. Check the label so you do not accidentally place a tall variety where it blocks smaller plants. Deadheading is important. Remove faded flowers regularly, and the plant may continue blooming for a much longer period. Cut the flower stem back to a healthy set of leaves rather than removing only the flower head. This keeps the plant looking cleaner. Shasta daisies form expanding clumps and usually benefit from division every few years. When the center begins dying out or the flowers become smaller, dig up the plant and separate the healthier outer sections. Replant those sections and discard the weak center. This process renews the plant and gives you several new clumps. Not all Shasta daisies are equally long-lived. Some varieties may decline after a few years, especially in poor drainage or extreme climates. Choosing a reliable variety and dividing regularly improves their lifespan. Bees and butterflies visit the flowers, and the sturdy stems make them useful for cutting. A vase of Shasta daisies looks fresh and simple without needing complicated arranging. For gardeners who want a traditional perennial that blends easily with bold or subtle colors, Shasta daisy is an excellent choice. Number 11. Russian sage. Russian sage creates clouds of lavender blue flowers above silvery foliage. From a distance, a mature plant can look like a soft purple haze floating over the garden. It thrives in heat, full sun, and dry soil. This is not a plant for a wet, heavily fertilized bed. Russian sage prefers lean conditions and excellent drainage. In rich soil, it may grow too tall and flop. In soggy ground, the roots may rot. Once established, it is highly drought tolerant. The leaves and stems have a strong scent that many browsing animals avoid. Again, nothing is completely animal-proof, but Russian sage is often left alone. The flowers attract bees throughout summer and can continue into autumn. Because the stems remain visible through winter, the plant adds structure even after flowering ends. In cold climates, the top growth may die back completely. That does not mean the plant is dead. Wait until spring, then cut the old stems back when new growth begins near the base. Do not cut it too early in autumn. The standing stems may help protect the crown during winter and provide visual interest. Russian sage has been reclassified botanically and is closely related to salvias, but gardeners still commonly use the older name. Whatever the label says, the plant's value remains the same. It is tough, long-blooming, and beautiful. Give it space. A mature plant can become wide and airy, and it looks best when allowed to form its natural shape. Crowding it between shrubs ruins the effect and reduces airflow. Russian sage works well beside yellow flowers, ornamental grasses, roses, coneflowers, and other sun-loving perennials. It is especially useful in dry front yards, slopes, and gardens where watering is limited. Plant it once in the right place, and it may become larger and more impressive every year with almost no attention. Number 12. Hellebores bloom when the garden is still waking up. Depending on the climate, they may flower in late winter or early spring, sometimes pushing through snow or cold rain. Their downward-facing flowers appear in white, cream, pink, purple, green, and dark burgundy. Many have speckles, contrasting edges, or unusual markings. Hellebores prefer partial shade and are excellent beneath deciduous trees. They receive sunlight in late winter and early spring before the trees leaf out, then gain shade as the weather becomes warmer. They like rich, well-drained soil with regular moisture, but they dislike standing water. Once established, hellebores are long-lived and need very little disturbance. They do not enjoy frequent moving, so choose the planting site carefully. The leaves are usually evergreen or semi-evergreen, depending on the climate. By late winter, the old foliage may look damaged or spotted. Cutting away those leaves before the flowers fully open makes the blooms easier to see and improves airflow. Wear gloves while handling the plant, as the sap may irritate sensitive skin. Hellebores often produce seedlings around the parent plant. These seedlings take time to flower and may not match the original variety, but they can eventually create a beautiful colony. Move them while they are small if you want them in another area. The flowers may look delicate, but the plants are surprisingly tough. They tolerate cold, shade, and root competition better than many flowering perennials. They are also less attractive to deer than many garden plants, although animals may still browse them under pressure. Hellebores fill an important role. They bloom before most of the other flowers on this list. When the garden is grey and nearly empty, they provide colour and proof that spring is coming. A mature clump can remain in place and flower for many years. Number 13, sedum. Sedum looks soft, but it is built for survival. There are many types, from low ground covering varieties to tall upright plants that produce broad flower clusters in late summer and autumn. The taller forms are especially useful in perennial gardens. They develop thick stems and fleshy leaves that store water, helping the plant survive drought and heat. Sedum prefers full sun and fast-draining soil. It can grow in rocky ground, sea soil, slopes, and other places where moisture disappears quickly. Rich soil and frequent watering can cause the stems to become weak and fall open. This is a plant that performs better when life is slightly difficult. The flower clusters often begin green, then change to pink, red, rust, or bronze as the season progresses. Bees and butterflies gather on them in large numbers, especially when fewer other flowers remain. That late bloom makes sedum extremely valuable to pollinators preparing for colder weather. Leave the dried flower heads standing through winter. They catch frost and snow beautifully and keep the garden from looking empty. Cut the old stems back in early spring before new growth takes over. If tall sedum flops, there are several possible causes. It may be receiving too little sun, much fertilizer, or too much water. The clump may also need dividing. Move it to a brighter, leaner location rather than immediately adding support. You can also pinch the stems back in late spring to create shorter, bushier growth, although this may delay flowering. Sedum is easy to propagate. A stem cutting can root and divisions establish quickly. Some pieces seem to grow even when handled roughly. That toughness makes sedum one of the best flowers for beginners, dry gardens, containers, and neglected corners. It is difficult to believe a plant with such smooth, delicate-looking leaves can tolerate so much, but that is exactly why it earns a place on this list. Number 14. Aster. Asters close the flowering season with a final explosion of colour. When many summer perennials are fading, asters begin covering themselves in daisy-like blooms. The flowers are commonly purple, blue, pink, or white with bright centres. They attract bees, butterflies, and other pollinators at a time when nectar can become harder to find. That makes asters one of the most important late-season plants in a wildlife garden. There are many types of asters, and their mature size varies dramatically. Some stay short and compact. Others grow several feet tall. Choose one suited to your space and region. Native asters are often the most useful for local wildlife and may be better adapted to your climate. Most prefer full sun, although some woodland types tolerate shade. They grow best in well-drained soil with moderate moisture. Once established, many handle short dry periods, but they bloom better when severe drought is avoided. Tall asters can become floppy. Pinching or cutting them back by about 1/3 in late spring or early summer encourages branching and creates a shorter, fuller plant. Do not cut them back too late, or you may remove developing flower buds. Asters can spread through roots or seed, depending on the type. Divide crowded clumps every few years to maintain strong growth and create more plants. Powdery mildew may appear, especially when air movement is poor. Space plants properly, water at the base, and choose resistant varieties if mildew is common in your area. The greatest strength of asters is timing. A garden filled only with spring and early summer flowers can become dull by September. Asters arrive when the landscape needs them most. They combine beautifully with sedum, ornamental grasses, goldenrod, and late-blooming black-eyed Susans. Together, these plants create an autumn garden that feels just as alive as the garden did in June. How to make sure perennials actually return. Planting a perennial does not guarantee it will come back. The label may say perennial, but that only means the plant can live for multiple years under suitable conditions. Your job is to give it those conditions. Start with climate. Check the plant's hardiness range and compare it with your location. A flower that survives winter in a mild area may freeze in a colder zone. A cold, hardy plant may fail in a tropical climate because it needs a winter rest period. Next, check sunlight. Full sun usually means at least 6 hours of direct light. Partial shade generally means a few hours of sun or filtered light. A sun-loving plant placed in deep shade may survive, but it will often stretch, flop, and produce fewer flowers. A shade-loving plant in harsh afternoon sun may scorch. Then check drainage. Many perennial flowers can survive poor soil, but very few tolerate roots sitting in water for long periods. After heavy rain, watch the planting area. If water remains for hours or days, improve drainage, create a raised bed, or choose a moisture-loving plant. Planting depth matters too. Do not bury the crown of the plant simply because you want it to feel secure. Some perennials rot when planted too deeply. Place the plant at roughly the same depth it was growing in its container, unless the instructions say otherwise. Water deeply during the first growing season. Even drought-tolerant plants need time to develop strong roots. A newly planted coneflower is not yet as drought-resistant as a mature one. Water the root zone, then allow the soil to breathe. Mulch helps control weeds and moisture, but keep it away from the plant's crown. A thick wet pile pressed against the stems can lead to rot. Avoid excessive fertilizer. Many of the toughest flowers on this list prefer average soil. Heavy feeding produces soft growth, fewer flowers, and weak stems. Finally, do not cut every plant down the moment the flowers fade. Some need their leaves to store energy. Others provide seeds for birds, shelter for insects, or structure during winter. Learn what each plant needs. A garden that returns every year is not created by buying the most expensive flowers. It is created by matching each plant to a place where it can succeed. Final recap, let us go through the 14 flowers one more time. Black-eyed Susan gives you bright summer color, feeds birds, and often reseeds. Coneflower handles heat and drought while attracting pollinators for months. Daylily survives difficult conditions and multiplies into large clumps. Peony can remain in one place and bloom for generations. Coreopsis produces masses of flowers with very little feeding or water. Bee balm attracts bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds while spreading into a strong patch. Yarrow thrives in dry, poor soil and supports beneficial insects. Perennial salvia provides colorful flower spikes and repeated blooms. Garden phlox brings height, fragrance, and strong midsummer color. Shasta daisy gives you a classic flower that can be divided again and again. Russian sage handles intense sun and drought while blooming for months. Hellebore flowers when most of the garden is still asleep. Sedum survives difficult dry conditions and feeds pollinators late in the year. And asters finish the season with color when many other flowers have faded. You do not need to plant all 14. Choose the ones that match your sunlight, climate, soil, and available space. Start with 3 or 4. Plant them well, allow them to establish, and divide them when they become large. Over time, a few small plants can become an entire garden. That is the real advantage of perennials. They reward patience. The first year they may look small, the second year they begin filling out. By the third year, they can transform the whole yard. So before you spend another spring replacing every flower that died during winter, choose plants that are built to return. Plant once, care for them while they establish, then watch the garden come back stronger every year. If this video helped you choose your next flowers, hit the like button and share it with someone who wants a beautiful garden without buying new. Plants every season. Subscribe for more practical gardening ideas that save time, money, and effort. And leave a comment telling me which of these 14 flowers you would plant first. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.